Good everyone, welcome to this video, and today it's a Spade review on the PB4Y-2 Privateer. Now this is going to apply to obviously this version, the American version, the Chinese version, and the French version. They're all the same, they all have the exact same defensive layout, exact same bomb loads, exact same armor plating, exact same top speeds and dive speeds, etc. So technically this is a 3-in-1, but obviously I've not spaded the Chinese one or the French one yet. I decided to do the US one first since I've already gotten it about half spaded with Killer Tigger, and then obviously I'm going to work over those two over time. So just a bit of heads up, there is going to be two less reviews. The Sterling videos were, well, the replays, sorry, were completely slaughtered by a flipping micropatch. So was the Spitfire Mark 5C. All I'm going to say is about those two. Sterling's go over the Mark 3, even though I personally think the Halifax is better. And as for the Spitfire, ground targets 400 meters gun conversions to maybe 500. Get in nice and close, get that weight of shot, and it really does some work. So, PB4Y-2 Privateer, why the unusual video title? Well, I know this is going to sound rather funny, but this thing can work as a pseudo dive bomber. Now, I can already hear people laughing and everything. Trust me, there's method in the madness. So the PB4Y-2 Privateer was designed to be a low-altitude aircraft, even though in War Thunder it lists its top speed at being at 25,000 feet. Now that can be achieved. Don't get me wrong, it can be achieved. However, getting it up there is an absolute arse. The four engines that are on this aircraft are not equipped with any form of supercharger, so you do not gain the additional thrust of what you would think. And having just 1300 horsepower on WEP with each engine, this thing, whilst it can get to high altitude, it's not designed for it. This thing is designed to be at low altitude, which is why there is no ball turret. Now, the tail turret and the side turrets, or the blisters, shall we say, they can point down rather significantly. If we take a look at the gun depression on this turret, it is minus 55, so it can shoot down and hit ground targets. The tail turret goes down to 41. But this thing's designed to be basically kissing the floor. This thing's not meant to be at high altitude, and yet you get high altitude bomber spawn. But this thing's got an ace up its sleeve. It can dive up to nearly 360 miles an hour. It could probably go higher, however, I've never ripped the wings off this thing, so I've never really tested it. But this thing can work as a pseudo dive bomber. So hopefully you lot have not laughed as much anymore. So let's go over the aircraft. Obviously, we've gone over the engines. Let's go over the armor plating, which is pretty significant for an aircraft of its time, but considering the aircraft that you will be fighting, it's not going to make a world of difference. Now, I don't know, because I believe this aircraft is based off the B-24 Liberator. I am not sure if this thing, well, if the B-24 can do exactly the same pseudo dive bomber job as this thing can. And even then, the PB4Y2 is probably better because this is at 5.3 and the B24 is stuck at 6.0, where it should not be. At least I think it is at 6.0. Yes, it is. And yet the B17G is at 5.7, even though this technically is not that different to the B17G. Gaijin, why is this thing at 6.0? I really don't understand why. But in terms of defensive armament, this thing's actually packing quite a bit of heat. You've got 6 twin turrets. For a start, twin 12.7 in the nose, 2 twin dorsal turrets on top, 1 side blister turret and another side blister turret with 2 machine guns each, and a tail turret. Let's just say this thing's packing a lot of heat. Now, is it going to save you in the long run? Probably not, because obviously the German aircraft will be able to keep up with you, and, well, they have heavy firepower. The wings on this aircraft, especially the tail as well, specifically the elevator section, they are very, very vulnerable to being destroyed, blown off, and just in general, you are going to get shot down a lot doing the method that I do. Obviously, as you can see down here, I'm not technically spaded, but I'll go over that in a moment when we go over the bomb loads. But for the most part, obviously stats are subject to change because obviously I've not technically finished spading it yet. But there it is. PB4Y-2, 15 deaths, 12 air kills, 65 ground targets, and 2 ships, which I honestly don't remember bombing ships in this thing. That tells you how long I've been working on this Spade for. But obviously, is my method the most efficient way? Probably not, but if it works for Napalm, it works for me, because Napalm's done a video on the Chinese one. So obviously, as you can see, protective vest and the 2,000-pound bombs. The bomb load I do recommend you get is the FLBC Mark 1, which gives you access to 8 1,000-pound bombs. This is awesome, this bomb load. You can level 2 bases and cripple a third. So, yeah. The stock bomb load cannot kill a base, so that thing you have to take into account. The upgraded bomb load can. You'll have to drop, I believe it's 7 bombs or 6. One of those two. 4 1,000s, you can drop a base and a third, and then obviously 8 bombs, which will do 2 bases, obviously 3 bombs a base, and then the last 2 on the third base. The 2,000-pound bombs take 2 per base, so that's a bit of a waste in my opinion. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this aircraft. It was a lot of fun, obviously, diving in and pushing this thing as hard as it could go. But like I say, if you can use it in this pseudo dive bomber role, it really does work well. So let's jump into the battle, and obviously I've put it in capital letters just to reiterate what I'm on about. An efficient dive bomber, and I mean that. Now, is this method going to work on every map with every weather type? No, it is not. I had the benefit of a bit of cloud in this one, if I remember rightly, and obviously with it being dusk and everything. Now, the battle does say 17 minutes, however, my participation is around about 11 minutes, roughly. So, let's just see what happens, eh? So, straight off the bat, 8 1,000-pound bombs are on board, and we have a load of Farmer Gileses on our team. We've got one guy who brought B-34 with his B-17 friend. We've got a P-47 loaded up with bombs, and I'm sure a few others are going to go ground attacking as well. Just give me a second, I'm just going to turn down the engine volume, because I tend to play with engine volumes higher when I've not got a headset on, but obviously because I've put the headset in and obviously started and everything, I don't tend to, like, I don't tend to adjust it, because I'm an idiot, but whatever. So this is really where the PB4Y comes into effect. You can see the speed right now, 345 miles an hour and climbing. I have put it in a semi-steep dive, and this thing is, well, it's coping fine. Obviously, I'm hitting 360, and at this point, I was getting a bit concerned about it. If you want to know the full dive speed, I think Killer Tigger knows it. But this method is probably one of the more fun ways of spading a bomber, I do have to say that. The 264 you can probably do it in, the 177 you can do it in, and the, well, as for American bombers, you can do it in, I think you can do it to B-24, can't say I've tried it, because I don't want to fly to B-24 until it gets a BR decrease, that is for certain. So obviously I'm coming in, obviously 8 1,000-pound bombs, obviously 3 per base, which is perfectly adequate. But like I say, you're not going to be able to get away with this method all the time. Just bear that in mind. Sometimes you might have to turn away before you even get your bombs off, which happens a lot for me. But this is one of the lucky ones where I got to do something for my team, and I got to at least contribute, even though this was a loss in the end. But obviously I'm approaching the target. Obviously once you level out, this thing does start to go back to its normal speed of around about 230 miles per hour, which is pretty reasonable. But this thing would operate typically lower than the altitude we're currently at of about 7,000 feet. This thing would be operating much lower. That's why there's 2 dorsal turrets, because obviously it would be attacked from above, and obviously the gunners would have to track targets that are above the aircraft. Another interesting point of note is that the bomb bay doors open in about half a second, because obviously it's meant to be at low altitude. It's meant to bomb targets that are, shall we say, closer to the ground, and obviously it might have to open its bomb bays quickly. The bomb bay doors open really quickly, so that's one thing you can maybe utilize to maintain speed. So obviously, one load of bombs out, that's 3 bombs away. Obviously you can hear fighters around me, and I was really getting concerned that I might have been seen through the clouds. And that can happen, especially in the thick cloud. I've noticed an awful lot of 1 and 9 pilots are somehow able to see through the area that I go through, and this is pretty thick cloud, it's quite hard to see. But yeah, it seems all these 1 and 9 pilots are able to see me and just bounce me and all that. But once again, obviously 3 bombs away and I will get that base. Now obviously the 3rd base I cannot kill. However, that Neo and A guy in that A26 is already miles ahead of me. Well, so he thinks. I'm going to scream in and drop my 2 bombs on that base before he can. And then obviously I can get points for it. Obviously I'm looking around, I'm keeping situational awareness. You really do have to keep your situational awareness with this aircraft. It is a big monster. It's not that maneuverable. And she's a bit temperamental with some of the maneuvers you can pull. Don't get me wrong, you can throw this thing around if you know what you're doing and you're not at high speed. But I mean, it would be nice if we didn't have Farmer Giles with his fully loaded up P47 and going up here to help against the enemy fighters, but hey ho, I can't tell him what to do. So obviously I dropped my 2 bombs there. That A26 is going to finish it off. And obviously I start making my way back towards the base. I've done my job, I've killed 2 bases and crippled the 3rd, and that A26 is going to finish that base for me. So you can sort of see why I enjoyed this aircraft. It was a lot of fun to just dive in like a madman in something as large as this and just completely waste 2.5 base, well 2 2/3 of a base. It's amazing. Now here's where the turrets come in handy. Obviously I don't get that many kills because I don't exactly turn around to go for another pass. But you can see the gunners have really good depression and elevation angles, even though obviously I didn't kill that artillery gun. But you can sort of see why people give this thing a reasonable effect in ground attack, because it can do it. If you're left alone, this thing's 50 cals can rip apart pretty much anything. Now that P47, Mr. Farmer Giles, has just crashed. The moment he saw that ME410, which is currently there, engaging that A26, he smashed it into the ground. Yeah, you're going to get that a lot with USA teams, unfortunately. There's an awful lot of USA teams that do that, sadly. Now, in a drag race, obviously the PB4Y will get completely smoked by an A26. But luckily the A26 doesn't seem to be spaded, and he still seems to be carrying bombs. So that's going to make my job a little bit easier. I believe he trades with the 410, which is a 410 B1, which I did not enjoy that aircraft. Telling it right now, that thing was a horrible Spade. Anyway, less about ME410s, because, well, you're obviously going to be seeing the B6R3 before you see this. Well before you see this. Now at this point, I do hear an aircraft. I'm thinking, what was that? Check the radar, and yep, there's a G55 right on my ass. Now luckily, this guy can't aim, so I took a few hits there, but the plane's fine. But I was very bloody lucky. It's at this point, however, where we meet our friendly neighbourhood moron. Can I just point out what this guy is going to be? Oh wait, no, the A26 managed to kill him. Okay, I guess I was wrong about that fact. But in a moment, we're going to see a Focke-Wulf 190A5, and yes, he's coming in now. He's just coming in on the radar. Obviously, I'm too busy trying to fly the bloody plane. He comes in, gets a couple of shots into my aircraft, and obviously he goes around for another pass, which is fair enough. He's doing everything he should. But obviously, 50s on this thing. I've already crit his engine. And at this point, he goes for the ram, but somehow manages to fuck that up. I did not miss this thing, pal. This thing's the size of a freaking postcode, but as you can see, the 50s are brutal on this thing with universal belts, and that's my second kill for this game. Now, before obviously I end the review and everything, I put in chat there that failed ram, which was pretty funny. I mean, he went for that ram quite clearly. That was a deliberate ram attempt. But he was that crap at doing a ram attempt, he missed a privateer, which... I'm not being funny, right? This... This is just one of those birds where it can't carry a team on its own. And as for the rammer, yeah, there's a lot of scummy German players who will literally chase you to the end of the map just to get a kill on your aircraft. Because they know what they can do. They know that this thing can kill 2 bases and cripple 2/3 of another. And, sorry, my phone's going a bit crazy at the moment. But, let's just say this is a bit of a temperamental aircraft. Sometimes you'll get great games, sometimes you won't. And this guy's a bit of a snowflake in chat, just to point out. He, for some reason, corrects me as darn right and then says don't cuss. I mean, yeah, damn can technically be termed as a cuss, but don't be a snowflake. This is the internet, pal. Now, landing the privateer, which is obviously the last bit I wanted to show you lot, is probably one of the harder things to do in this aircraft. Now, I think this does apply to the B-24 as well, because obviously this is very much based on a B-24. It's landing it. Now, that seems funny, but landing gear takes a bit of time to come down, and because of the large wing area and the large flap area, this thing, well, it can be a bit temperamental. Obviously, I got it down perfectly that time. But in order to brake fully, you're going to have to put your nose wheel down, which obviously will require you to move your mouse and everything else. But yeah, once you get used to this plane, it's a good aircraft. I do have to say that. So, that's the end of it. Obviously, another 7 minutes of the battle left. Yeah, nothing happens at that point. I think I took up. Well, obviously, you get an air spawn when you rearm. So if you do want to J out from a game, come to a complete stop and then J out as normal on a runway. So do that as normal. You just have to come to a complete stop. So obviously, I'm still at speed at the moment, but in order to J out safely, you would have to come to a complete stop. But other than that, this thing is relatively fun. Like I say, this aircraft is built for low altitude purposes, so please don't be that guy and try and climb this thing to 30,000 feet, which is its service ceiling, but don't be that guy because you will not have a fun time doing it. And another thing to point out, this thing does have a violent stall. Once you get to around 160 miles an hour at medium altitudes, this thing can stall, and it is rather violent, so you've got to be careful of that. But other than that, I really recommend people give this thing a go. Obviously, there are different techniques to flying this aircraft, but I think mine's the more daredevil and more fun route, because, well, that's just how I am. But anyway, I will let you guys off. I hope you enjoyed today's video on the PB4Y-2 Privateer, and I will see you all on the next one.